hello everyone, and welcome to this session. Hopefully that's coming through okay. All right, well, welcome to the session, which is going to be a talk about centralizing the CLO, something that I'm definitely very curious about, and hearing more of the insights from our four wonderful panelists. So just a very quick introduction to our panelists. There's Jessica Mitsch, who's the co-founder and CEO of Momentum. And Momentum serves the tech and business community in the Triangle area, which is Raleigh and Durham in the United States. And they are a place for transformative professional education. Also, we have Michael Cannon, who is the head of learning and development at Red Hat. And that is the world's leading provider of open source software. We also have Regina Dode, who is a senior account manager. Did I pronounce it wrong? Sorry.
It's okay. It's Regina.
Regina. Yeah. Sorry about that.
No
and she's the senior account manager at TSR Consulting Services, a leading provider of IT staffing services. And we also have, I think we have Erica DiPiero. Hopefully, I'm not sure if she's here or not, but Erica DiPiero is in charge of digital innovation at Citigroup. So thank you very much all for being here and for talking about this very interesting topic about bringing learning to the high C-suite level, which I'm really looking forward to hear. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. And I'm thrilled to have our panelists together today to talk about this topic. And I believe that we have some really good perspectives to share. Hopefully we'll be able to get Erica on. We're having some login issues with her, but Erica and Michael are both representing a background of really working on making learning part of an enterprise organization. And then what Regina's bringing to the table is how does it affect talent? How does it affect the talent marketplace? And so I think with both perspectives, we're going to have a really interesting conversation today. So my hope and intent is that this is a really organic conversation. And I want to start by introducing and allowing our panelists to introduce themselves, give you some sense of their background so everyone understands their vantage point and orientation. And then we'll get the conversation started there and keep it really organic. So I'm going to turn it over first to Michael, who again is with Red Hat and I believe helps lead the Red Hat University and internal training programs for Red Hat. So Michael, I'm going to let you give your introduction.
Thanks, Jessica. I'm just really thrilled to be here, and it's always good to see an ex-Red Hatter. So nice to see you again. And first off, let me say, to be very clear, I am not in the C-suite. My boss is the Chief People Officer at Red Hat, Jen Dudek, who's just joined Red Hat. But I am in charge of the global enterprise learning team at Red Hat, and we teach and deliver training for sales enablement, for technical training, manager leadership training, and professional development training. So we have a whole array of training that we deliver, that we design, develop, and deliver around the world, as well as curate. I've been at Red Hat for 6 years now, and before that, I was with IBM. For the 15 years before that, I was with Cisco and IBM. And I'm old enough to have a longer history, but I will not bore you with it. I will say I've got an engineering undergraduate degree and an education graduate degree. So how I got here is a strange story, but I do love learning and development. It's definitely my passion. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Michael. And Regina, I'm going to turn it over to you. You're a senior account manager at TSR, focusing on the talent pipeline.
Yes, that's me. So I've been a senior account manager here at TSR Consulting for over 12 years. I'm also a former board of director of TSR Consulting, which was founded over 50 years ago. So we've been in the business for quite a long time. Our clients include global investment banks, brokerage firms, pharmaceutical companies, Big Four audit companies. And our big focus is providing white glove services to both our clients and our consultants. And we do this by providing our clients with best-in-class talent, and then also matching our consultants to opportunities that fit their strengths, personality, and goals. So we've been doing this for a long time. We have a great approach. We take a three-prong approach. It's our processes and our people who are our seasoned recruiters and account managers, and then our proprietary tool sets, which include a database of over 4 million resumes, and our ability to harvest resumes across all the job boards. And then the ability, again, to not only serve our clients with finding candidates for their open positions, but reverse recruiting, helping candidates find positions themselves. So that's what we do, and I'm sure we'll get into more of it as we go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. And we're still trying to figure out if our third panelist is going to be able to join or not, but to give some context so that if she is able to join, she can jump right in. We're also looking forward to having Erica from Citigroup here. She's head of their enterprise learning innovation practice. And so her challenge is to get the tools of learning how to get an organization like Citi, a 200-something-year-old bank, into the practice of making sure that there's continuous learning across the organization. So hopefully she can join us, and I hope that I did her introduction justice. But given that we have Michael here to give some internal company perspective, I'm actually going to start the conversation with you, Michael, and then Regina will certainly have you chime in on from a talent perspective and what companies can do and how they should think about learning from a talent perspective. So Michael, my first question for you is really, how do you, at an enterprise, at a large company, how do you instill a culture of continuous learning, and why is it important?
Well, it's hard, right? And so I don't want to say that I have instilled a culture of continuous learning. I think Red Hat, by its very nature, it's a growth organization, it's a technology organization. So a lot of the people, if not all the people we bring in, are lifelong learners themselves, and they have to keep learning in order to be good at their jobs, to be proficient at their jobs. And most people at Red Hat, like other companies like us, they don't want to be good, they want to be the best, right? So there's a lot of just requirement and innate desire for learning. At the same time, there is this phenomenon that I've noticed in corporate learning. I was with IBM for a long time and Cisco for a while, great companies, by the way. There is this phenomenon in the world of corporate learning where people seem to think if you want to learn how to, let's say, manage the remote teams, let's say you want to do some training on managing remote teams, there's this phenomenon that people think, well, I'll just go to a class. I'll just go to a half-day virtual class, or I'll go to a 3-day class, however long it is, and then I'll be a manager of remote teams. Whereas if you were to ask someone to learn how to play the piano, they'd say, oh, that'll take a couple years, right? Because people get it. And somehow in the corporate world, they think going to a class equates to learning. And we think, and we've tried to promote and continue to, that going to a class is at the very best, the very beginning of the learning journey. Right. And learning actually takes going back and practicing this thing that you theoretically learned or heard about in a class, and often failing at it, and then reflecting on why you failed, and then adjusting your behaviors and trying again. I mean, again, it's just like learning the piano. It's not different. Human beings learn things the way human beings learn them, no different in the corporate world than otherwise. And so we've been on just a continuous drumbeat at Red Hat within our learning organization. And it's not just us. People are starting to get this, that, going to a class is not learning. And if you really want to learn something, you've got to put the work in. There actually is no shortcut you can take, no pill you can take, no e-learning you can do, no magical learning technology. Unfortunately, we're stuck with human brains and human bodies. And so therefore we have to learn the way those things work. And it's an effort. And it takes continual remindment. We often get requests to come do some training for 2 hours in our quarterly business review. And we'll say, well, what I want to say is, well, what good is that? That's what I want to say. But what I say is, well, what are you trying to achieve here? And often they just want to show their people that they care about them. And I talk to them about, look, they're not going to learn anything in 2 hours, right? They may be entertained, they may be enticed to learn something in the future. I call that edutainment, not learning. And so we're always on the soapbox or the warpath or whatever you want to use to say, look, the reason for learning and development is sustained behavior change. that takes time, effort, repeated interventions, practice, care, work. There is no shortcut. So it's a continual drumbeat, but it's exciting too. Right? We're all lucky to work in the learning field, and what a great way to make a living is that our customer is the business, it's the company, it's the strategic goals, but the way we get to help the business in learning is by helping human beings be more successful, right? And that's really rewarding and exciting, but it's not easy.
Michael, those are excellent points. I love that you've identified, hey, we can't just, being part of the learning organization in the company, say, you're going to go through these classes and you're going to come out with a magic stamp and be able to implement all these things. How do you get the business? Because part of your role in the business is offering trainings and putting those together. So how do you work through making sure that it's more of a mindset that is that goes throughout the organization, and that acknowledgement that it's a continued practice? And I'm going to pause real quick and give you a second to think about that answer while I welcome Erica, who just joined. Erica, thank you for being here and joining the conversation. We did a mini introduction for you when you were working on logging on, so we're just jumping right in. I'm going to let Michael answer that question and then throw one at you.
Well, I mean, I don't want to pretend that we've been successful completely, right? It's an everyday task that we have as learning professionals and learning organizations to continue to beat that drum, right? It doesn't go away. And if we stop working on it, any progress you've made will default back to zero, right? It's a continual effort, but entropy will take over if you don't work on it. But I think you asked, how do we do it? I think like most things in the world, it's about relationships and trust, right? Three things: relationship, trust, relationships, and then delivering on the goods, right? So people need to know that you're actually in it for them, that you're not there from on high, from some HR ivory learning tower to tell them how to do it. They need to believe that you really care about them and their teams being successful. So and that takes time and trust. And then when you are successful at convincing a group to allow you to do what you believe is a good intervention over time, 3, 4, 6 months, whatever it is, then you better deliver, right? Or otherwise, you got that one shot. I trusted you and you delivered junk to me. Well, we're done now. So it's about relationships, and it's about delivering quality. And again, I don't want to sit here and pretend that everything we do is successful or is great or is wonderful. We do our best. I'd like to think we do some nice things and some good things, but it's that relationships, trust, and then delivering on the goods, right?
Yeah, it's all about the people at the end of the day is what it sounds like. And that's very true to what we've learned at Momentum as well, because we provide a lot of that transformative talent, early on training. And we always say, we're just the launch pad. Everything that you're learning here, you're going to have to actually apply, and it doesn't stop. Knowledge doesn't have a finish line, so to say. So really excellent perspective, Michael. And Erica, I'm going to now bring you into the conversation. And the question that we're starting to talk about is how do you, in your role within the organization, for you at Citi, how do you get the entire organization to think about the importance of continued learning and make it part of the behavior that is throughout the organization?
Sure. And just to start, I just left Citi a month ago. I don't want to say I retired, but after 20 years without a summer break and remote school for the past year with 3 kids at home, I said for myself, I need a break. So I've been with Citi for 6 years, leading learning and development at the enterprise level around the topic of innovation. And so I was, working across many businesses and many regions on the topic of innovation. And we always just had to come in, following on what Michael had said. Of course, you have to, start with those relationships and trust. You have to be in the room and be invited into the room. And how do we stay in the room is, really making sure we understand what's the problem they're trying to solve this year for their strategy, for their business, what are their pain points, and really trying to understand, when senior leaders would come to me and say, I want to do Python training for all of my bankers, and just try to talk them off the ledge. Okay, what are you trying to do with that? What's that problem? What's that going to do for you? What's the pain point that you're trying to solve with this solution? And really then try to step it back. And we have this culture flower, we call it, that we would use, something we had come up with in my group, mostly by my manager, previously, Eric Berger, around really thinking through what are all the different things that when we're trying to change culture, mindset, skills, whatever is the word that the business wants to use, we would really try to help them think about, okay, the mindset, what are the stories, the leader, the communication, really working with the comms team, marketing. Also, then we would often try to target our interventions from learning around actions, like actually they need to do what differently. And whereas years ago, we used to really try to come in more with the concept and philosophy, we really leave that and partner with comms and marketing for that. And we would really try to focus on the actions. And there's all the other pieces too, the incentives and whatnot, but we would try to put it all down in this, 5 pieces and say, okay, this is our skeleton, our plan, bum, 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 bum. Leader, this is your part, and this is how we're going to move the needle. And just like Michael was saying, and this is what we're expecting in 3 months, right? That's the minimum time to change behavior according to the recent thinking. And importantly, what's our measurement that we're going to be able to come back, and working at Citibank, everyone is so data centric that if you don't come in with that metrics plan, here's the things we're going to measure, the pulse surveys or whatever, you're not going to gain their trust. So even if we would come back and our measurement didn't show as much movement as we would like, at least we had something to show that we're serious and we're tracking it.
Yeah, I feel like that's an excellent point. Oh, sorry, Michael. Go ahead.
I have to jump in. I love what Erica said. I think it's the most fundamental thing about what do you want them to do differently? It's not what do you want them to know or anything. What will they do differently when they're done with this that will help you? I printed out little cards and laminated them that I gave to business leaders whenever I met with them when I first came to Red Hat, that just had that on it. What do you want people to do differently? Because
I love that.
Nothing else matters, right? Because I can know everything in the world, but if I don't behave differently, there's no value at all. So it's
such a fundamental question, because, and often businesses can have a hard time answering that. Well, I just want them we need more clients. Okay. What aren't they doing right now that's getting in the way?
Yes.
And that's our job, right? Is to diagnose, to really help them understand, okay, let's really get underneath that, and spending the time that it takes to diagnose that. And leaders sometimes come to us, they don't really, they think that they know, and they don't, and that's not their job, right? That's our job, to work with them to understand it better, which is fun, actually. It's investigative.
It's very tempting sometimes, or easy, to just fulfill their order, to give them their training that they asked for. But we really are falling down on the job if we don't push them and help them identify what behavior change are they really looking for. And a behavior change can also be stopping something, right? As well as starting something. Sorry, I'm really passionate about that point.
Oh, I love it. I love your cards.
I love that you are both seeing the role, the CLO role, as the panel's called, is really a consultative role to the business. And it goes back to the Simon Sinek concept of also why, because you both mentioned it's okay, what behaviors do you need them to change? And also why? What is ultimately the win for the organization? And I think that's excellent. I really am curious, because you both touched on this, and what you talked about is how has this perspective changed in the time, Erica, in the 6 years that you were at Citigroup, and Michael, in the time from when you were at IBM to Red Hat? How has the mindset changed? Because you both have been in those positions long enough to have seen, hey, we tried some things, those things didn't work, and now this is what we're doing. What are those challenges, and how have you, how are you thinking of taking a different approach than you did maybe 6 years ago?
I'll let Erica start.
I'm trying to make sure I'm answering this not like what I would like the answer to be. I'll tell you what I would like the answer to be is I felt like it used to be check the box. We're going to send our people to training and boom, I don't really care. Let them go and talk and stay at a really cool place for a few days. Now I feel like what I'm sensing is from the leaders, there's some real urgency to upgrade skills and to for work to be a bit more fulfilling, to, there's a bit more choice and flexibility, or at least I sense that at the more senior level. And we really need to be rolling out the red carpet, but not in we're going to let you go off and kind of chit chat for a few days. Citibank is very, it's a traditional bank. It's 200 years old. And they are running to catch up, to keep up. And we can't do that just death by 1,000 paper cuts is how they call it. If you look at all of the services that are getting, commoditized down to this level where Citibank does everything soup to nuts, we've got 14 competitors just like transferring money virtually, between people. So how do we keep up? They're really willing to, I don't want to say try anything, but learning is seen more as a tool to really compete now. That's my sense. And I'm going to let Michael check me and challenge me. Maybe that's not your sense, because this is a bit rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think people are, there's nothing like competition to raise your interest and attention, right? And the marketplace is super competitive, right? And it's super fast. I would say this is the first job I've had where I would be in charge of the learning organization. The previous jobs I had would be like the people that report to me now, great jobs, but I wasn't as much setting the philosophy of the learning organization, or I should say trying to set the philosophy. Control is a myth, no matter what your job is. But I would say that as soon as I got this job 6 years ago, I stopped trying to impress leaders, right, with my fancy learning philosophy and my adult learning theory and all of the things. And I just started trying to say, why are we doing this, right? Well, what's the goal? Because if, frankly, we could get rid of the learning organization if you could give somebody a pill to be better at their job. So learning is not the end, right? It's performance improvement, it's behavior change. Hopefully what flows from that is engagement and, retention and, great market performance and all of those things. But I've just been on a mission to just be very blunt and straightforward. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes that works great and people really appreciate it. And sometimes people look at me and they're like, you're an idiot, right? I mean, you don't know what you're talking about. I need somebody who impresses me with PhD terminology if I'm going to work with them. But I just can't get there, right? Sometimes I hand them over to somebody in my team who's smarter than me to talk to. But I'm not sure a lot has changed. Frankly, people in business, and I think any business, time is money. It's a very cliche saying, but they want it yesterday. They want it yesterday. And our message, if we're honest with them, is not only can you not have it yesterday, you can't have it for 6 months. And they hate that message, right? They want the message that says, oh, if you use this fancy tool or this thing, they're going to learn faster. They're going to be productive faster. Well, sorry, there is no magic, right? There isn't. And so I'm not sure a lot has changed. I think I spend less of my time having this discussion with leaders today at Red Hat than I did 6 years ago, because they've heard it and some of them are starting to believe it. And, there's some of that, but it's just never ends. I'm not a good rose-colored glasses person.
Well,
fair enough.
Regina, I want to bring you into this because I think what's interesting, Erica, that you highlighted, especially for an organization like Citi, is it becomes a talent competition and a marketplace requirement in addition to what the capabilities do people have at work. Regina, how are you seeing this as you're going out and finding the appropriate talent for companies and attracting it at the same time? How do you see the learning strategy within an organization impacting the talent market?
Well, first of all, there's a little irony here. So Erica, we're one of the major suppliers to Citigroup. So just kind of funny that we're on the same conference. Yeah, it's really cool. So recap that question. Give it to me one more time.
Yeah, how like for when you're recruiting for organizations, you're looking for the right talent. You're also mentioned before that you do some talent matchmaking at the senior levels as well. What is talent thinking about? How are they wondering how an organization is answering what Michael and Erica have been answering, the learning strategy or the chance for continuous improvement?
So they do ask, sometimes our consultants who are out in our clients, they do ask about, how can I upskill? How can I get some more certifications? And clients, well, to Michael's point, it's not always that important. It's actually, have they done the work? But oftentimes companies don't provide them with the training that they're looking for. And those are the people that we end up speaking to about their next adventure, that they're starting to look outside of the company and look for an organization that is going to feed them. So for retention's sake, companies do need to look at their current workforce. How are they feeding them? Are they meeting their educational goals? Are they meeting their career goals? And if they're not, they're going to start to lose that talent. And if they lose that talent, that costs them a great deal of money. There's projects that go on hold, very expensive projects, $1 million, multi-million-dollar projects, and whatnot. So I don't interface really with the CLOs, so I don't have a lot of visibility in there. I just know from my experience dealing with talent, candidates who are looking for their next adventure, why that's their number one reason why that they leave, is they're looking for career growth. And they're not seeing that, they're stagnant in their roles. They're actually sometimes doing old technology, and they don't want to get left behind. So they realize that sometimes if they don't start looking or start moving in a more forward direction, they're going to lose out and then eventually not be able to get a job or maintain a job. So IT is tough. IT is tough because what you learned yesterday becomes irrelevant in a couple of years' time. So you have to constantly upgrading your skills and talents. So yeah.
That's a great segue into, I'm really curious, Erica, you mentioned when you were talking about all the managers wanted everybody to know Python, and how technology and the speed of technology, especially recently, especially when you think of competition, when you've got a 200-year-old bank and then you've got the Venmos of the world coming up against you, like how and why, how has that impacted the conversations that you have with managers, and how has that evolved over the past 6 years?
Oh God, it's just exploded. We didn't have to have, like, this was technical skills, it was businesses would take care of it, but working at the enterprise level and learning, and that means it's got to really affect complete regions, complete like number of businesses, and it's at that level now where big data and automation being the two biggest ones, and Python is really just for a small margin of people, but leaders are just like throwing everything at it. I heard Python, crypto, like, and there's not a lot of us in learning that understand it. And I'm speaking of one who doesn't understand it. So, having to learn myself enough just to understand. And I spent most of 2020 trying to unpack big data to understand what's the commonalities across that I can justify enterprise really focusing on that. And we had to get down to the basic building block of data literacy, just be it, everyone understands how to save things and name it, like basic stuff. And even that across, including all of us legacy people, don't even have basic data literacy skills, which, as Regina was just saying, changes and evolves constantly. So, we made the decision it's just much easier to buy this information outside, and whether it's, videos and, communications and nudge campaigns and whatnot, just to try to get us all at a very basic level. But I can't even think, I've done a lot of recruiting for last year for my own team, and we just needed people with those skills ourselves and learning. I can't even think of anything with metrics, but also just the automation that we need. Otherwise, we're going to be, looking through lists and sending out emails. So it's just become a huge part. And I think we're playing a little bit of catch up in learning, getting ourselves educated enough to turn around and educate and understand, like, what are the right needs and where can we, focus.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I used to work at Red Hat, so was there
Yeah.
before Michael and had understood, like, you know, when we talked about technology, it was so much about that war of talent concept.
Mhm.
You know, we're still in a competitive nature. I don't know if everybody's calling it war of talent anymore, but there weren't enough people in the market with that skill set, and that was, you know, almost a decade ago. And now, you know, what from Momentum's vantage point, our original mission when we went out and built this company was going after all those people that were already in companies, you know, going after and saying, hey, you've had a marketing job for 15 years and that's not going to cut it anymore. You've got to know some other skills. And so now the conversation seems to be shifting. Like you said, Erica, it's like, yeah, the organization needs it, but my team needs it too, because we need it just to get the day-to-day work done across the organization, regardless of department. Michael, as somebody that's in a really innovative and hot tech company that's, you know, on the cutting edge of technology, how has technology impacted your role and Red Hat's position?
There are so many dimensions to this question. I mean, I'll start with the sort of the most basic one. Historically, we've taught our associates Red Hat technologies, particularly the associates that need it, right? So, and I have really technical facilitators that deliver the technology, deliver those courses, both live, virtually, remote, asynchronous. So we've got some really smart people, men and women, that deliver that technical training to our associates that need it. Not everyone needs that level of training, right? What we've seen in recent years and what we're seeing more and more of is it's not enough to know our stuff, particularly our sales force and our sales engineers. We call them SAs. I don't know why. The whole world calls them SEs. We call them SAs. But anyway, they have to, they are needing more and more to know the technology of their customers, right? So we're a B2B. We're not a, you know, we're not a B2C business. And so if I'm going into an airline business to sell them Red Hat, then I don't need to just know Red Hat, which, by the way, has got 70,000 product solutions and is changing all the time, just like every other tech company. I need to know how the heck the airline industry works, right? And so that has become a curation, not only in the technical space, but in every space. Curation of learning that exists is becoming a huge job, because, you know, it's just, you do a Google search and you get 1,000 answers. Well, which one's any good, right? And so part of our job as learning professionals, more and more of our job is becoming helping identify the good stuff that's out there, so that our associates, what we call employees, our associates don't have to find it themselves or take something that's bad. So that's the how to teach people technical stuff. And again, we can talk about that for 3 hours. Then there's the technology and learning itself. You know, 5, 7, 10 years ago, it was all about the learning management system. I mean, you hear LMS out there yin yang all the time. You know, the learning management system is an important element of a very complicated learning ecosystem, technology ecosystem today, that includes corporate commercially available libraries like LinkedIn or Pluralsight or O'Reilly. There's a million of these commercially available libraries. It's also the stuff that we build. It's e-learning, it's instructor-led learning. It's also user-generated content, and how do we enable the experts out in the business to generate their own content? You know, how do we give them the 3 instructional design techniques so that they don't try to shove as much material onto a slide as they possibly can fit? Just make the font smaller, right? Is the mantra of the engineering team, and you'll get more on the chart and people will learn more. But how do you give them a little bit of guidance and then let them go? So we have video streaming technology that allows for that. We probably have 7 or 8 technologies that historically people would go to the LMS and sign up for something. Well, now the LMS is just one piece of that cog, and a big part of the learning team's job is to hide all of that mess with an abstraction layer. Some people call it a portal. I mean, but it's not just a portal with links to these different things. How do you do searches that go across all of these different platforms and find the thing or the things that people need? So I have a whole team that's focused on learning technology, right? So that we can not only know what's in the industry that we want to use, but then we can tie all of that mess together and hide the complexity of it from, I call them the victim, but I mean the learner, right? How can we hide the hardness, the mess from the learner, so that they can access all of that easily? So we have to have technical skills, pretty deep technical skills in the learning team. I have no idea what they do. I just know they're smart and they make it work, right? To help the learner leverage all those things. There's just so many dimensions to this, right? I mean, the last dimension I'll say goes back to talent acquisition, which is there is a war for talent, and it's more and more and more brutal. and the skills that we're looking for, everybody's looking for, and they're really hard to find. So learning is expanding into things like apprenticeships and all sorts of things, so that we can we hire for potential and build the skill, because it just doesn't exist in the marketplace in the quantities that we need. That's primarily a technical skill statement. It's not, you can find a guy like me to do anything learning. You can find 1,000 of those, but find an OpenShift engineer that knows Ansible and can do all. It's like, okay, well, now you're done, right? There's 3 of those people in the world, and so we've got to build the skill.
Right.
So it has so many impacts.
Yeah. And I think what you brought up there too, I'm really curious, Erica, to hear your perspective. And then Regina, I know you're going to have something to say about this as well. I mean, we would miss the boat if we didn't talk about the fact we're all on Zoom today instead of at the in-person conference because of the pandemic. And so much of the change that has happened in learning organizations, and especially Michael, as you mentioned, like all the different ways to approach learning with an organization and LMS, that has even shifted and accelerated in the past little bit. We talk to companies a lot about how are we, when we go all remote, and there's, as you know, a lot of tech companies that are doing this. How do we make sure that that entry-level talent or that really high performing but junior talent gets the skills they need without rubbing against shoulders with other people that are more senior in the organization? And then also, how do we effectively get that training out? Because to your point, Michael, at the beginning, so much of what learning is actually the practice of doing this on the job. And, that's changing now that the dynamics, the work dynamics have, temporarily, if not permanently, shifted. So Erica, I'll let you jump in here, and how has in the past year and a half, or how long this has been going on, how have you had to think about how are we going to get training out to the masses effectively?
Yeah, well, like, amen to everything Michael said, in terms of the learning advisor, we're diagnosing, we're curating, we're doing it fast. And if we're not agile in order to say, I really can understand your problem, and, we don't have time to let me understand this skill and build, no, I'm going to go out, I've got my, 8 vendors and my 4 people I can check with, and I'm going to get something and we're going to test it and run. And this past year, we have a very robust digital learning team as well. And they are always pushing the envelope and pushing us, because we don't like change. Oh, another system, we got to try this, and really trying to put the learner in the driver's seat and let them self-serve and help each other, and all the things that Michael had said as well. So this past year, we had to work a lot faster. So my team, as an example, we didn't have a global, not really, we didn't have a global remote onboarding program. We didn't have a global onboarding program, full stop. And we definitely didn't have one remotely. So that's what my team had worked on this past year. And we leaned heavily on automation in order to make it run. So we had just implemented in the past few years Workday, and we had to work with the Workday team, the internal team, that knows how to automate everything to, okay, well, we're going to translate this, and this is going to go to hires from the campus, and this will go to this, and really try to have it be white glove and high touch as possible, but still automated, because we're hiring thousands of people a week. And that was a real learning for myself, my team, and also learning. It was the first time we used automation to that extent at a global level, because no matter what, business are like, well, I'm unique and we want our team to, no. If we want to do this fast and you want to get it done, then you're going to have to live with, we're not going to get it down to the very specific, and you're going to have to layer on something for your business. So we've had to build those skills ourselves, just like, Michael had said. There's no way we could have found someone to hire. I would have found them, because I can't tell you how many people I've interviewed this past year, and they just don't exist. So we need to build those skills ourselves. And the switch to digital and curation, ship has sailed, you're on it and you're going, or you're way behind at this point. And I wouldn't say we're sailing and know what we're doing at Citi when I left, but learning, tacking and move. I don't know sailing, but that's a bad metaphors, but trying to ride that ocean with all the new software that comes out. And it's hard, because the learner, the consumer, has got to learn too. So just like Michael said, how do we make it as easy as possible for them to self-serve, for it to pop up, for them to navigate and find what they're looking for. Everyone knows, not everyone, but a lot of people know what they're looking for. You just have to make it really easy for them to find it, because mostly they're going to go to Google first, right? That's where we go to Google and we go to our peers. But if you really have good information, they'll go and they'll find it and then they'll come back. But it's up to us to make that work for them.
Yeah, I saw Michael's like laughing and like nodding his head in agreement, Erica, especially as you mentioned, you know, every part of the business wants to be treated. You're kind of serving all the different parts of the organization, and they all, you know, believe and are special in their own way. You know, Michael, you brought up, and Erica, you echoed this too, is, you know, so much of this now is about talent, because if we can't find it, we've got to build it. And Regina, I'd love for you to just chime in about the current talent landscape from your perspective, serving in that talent acquisition recruiter type of position. Like, what does the landscape look like? Why is, if we've got business leaders listening, why is the work that Erica and Michael do every day so important to make sure that you're shoring up your overall talent acquisition, talent retention strategy? What's the landscape?
So right now, there's, as they pointed out, there's so many different technologies. They do have to work with their leaders and the managers to find out how that they can help them succeed. My personal experience right now is I've been building out a very large team for Ernst & Young EY, one of my clients, with new grads. And one of the reasons why we're doing this is that they want to teach them from the ground up, because it's also hard to retool some workers who have been entrenched and to change their philosophy, their way of doing things. So what we're doing is I've been working with a bunch of new grads, placing them there. And what they're doing is it's in the treasury vertical. They're actually training them, hands-on training, matching them with mentors and coaches to learn how to be business analysts and project managers. And their skills are, the only skills that they come to the table with are that they have a great attitude, they have the aptitude, they have to have strong written and verbal communications, they have to be flexible, they have to be willing to be open-minded, flexible, open to different solutions, open to their peers giving them feedback, and efficient, able to work in a smart way, so that they can, now the management team can mold them and help them progress on. So we've had some students, new grads, that have been on this team for a year, and they started off total newbies out of college, and now they're being recruited away at 120K to 150K because of the type of skills that they learned. But now Ernst & Young has turned around and said, we want to keep you. They're matching all this. So they're learning that if you invest in these, your employees, they will perform, they'll be happy, and their skill sets are going to become invaluable. And they're also thinking the way the entire organization wants them to think. They've learned the EY way. So I would say, they would learn the Red Hat way or the Citigroup way. If you had a really good mentoring and coaching for people that come on. Now, for my established IT professionals that come in, what I encourage them to do is to meet with their managers on a routine basis and to get a good understanding of and to express what they're looking to achieve by accepting this role, and how they want to help the team, and what the manager needs and what they need. So there needs to be a back and forth so everyone can succeed and learn and move forward and produce. So communication is one of the biggest things. So I think if a worker is unhappy, I think a manager needs to sit down and say, how can we make you feel more successful and happy in your role? So that's what I hear, though, is the number one thing is, folks are just not happy with the environment, and they're looking for their next great adventure. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for that perspective, Regina. And I think what also I heard in there that I'm really curious, Michael and Erica, to know your perspective on is you mentioned, for those new hires that are coming in, that in this case, junior, that are getting trained by the company, you cited a lot of skills that they had that are really, behaviors that can be measured. And it made me think about, Michael and Erica, how you have to think about your role in regards to the overall talent management strategy and performance reviews and those type of things, and how the learning strategy plugs in, and potentially how do you use the data coming from the organization, or how do you make sure the organization is getting the right data so that you know what type of training is really necessary. Michael, to your point, why and what behaviors do we need to see? So how does your role, Michael, play into the bigger organizational performance management goals? How do we measure behaviors? How do we make sure we're on the right track?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only reason they're separate is because you have to build organizations and teams, because if I'm an employee, it's all just the same thing, right? I mean, they shouldn't need to care that we have performance management systems and learning systems, right? Or that we have all of this organizational structure is just so that things work. But if I'm on the user side of it, it's just the company asking me to do things, or me helping myself be better at my job or at whatever. So they have to be really tightly integrated. I mean, I've read novels where people can actually use data and figure things out, but I've not lived in a company where that happens yet. And I say that a little bit tongue in cheek, but we try to look at data. We try to look at development plans to see what sort of skills people are calling out. It's really hard. We have Workday too. We just transitioned to Workday. It's a big improvement over what we had, a company that Larry Ellison owned that I won't mention, that's a nightmare. But it's still really, really hard. I think we spend a lot of our energy, instead of trying to pull the data to figure out, we spend a lot of our energy enabling and encouraging and hopefully inspiring managers to be really engaged with their associates, to set their development plans and tie those to their learning plans so that they're meeting the goals that they need to meet. So we're trying to do a sort of a front end push, and we do try to look at the back end, but I'll be honest, it's really, really hard, at least for us. If somebody's figured it out, I want to meet you, right?
Erica, has your team figured that out?
No, but I can like I'm seeing it on a spectrum, right? So there's like everything every individual needs to know, which is so specific. And how can we make that, like what we were just talking about, make it easy for people to understand what they need to know and go and learn what they need to know specifically for themselves. And what Regina was talking about, like the manager communication, like having that feedback be really open, and whether you want to call it radical candor or all the different ways that we talk about, let's just give each other feedback, feedback to enhance. We've had a lot of different ways of calling this in City, and we're just beginning to really try to crack that nut to make sure that all ideas are vetted and people give feedback, and we're just doing this to make each other better, make it better for the customer, make it better for the company, make it better for the employees. So there's that. And then there's the trends. So at City, one of the trends that they're trying to do, they're big trends. So City, we're a bank. It has to be conservative, and yet we need to be client focused. And yet the people that are at the client, we have a B2B and a B2C side, but they're like the tip of the spear, and there's this whole group behind them, whether it's logistics and technology and the people programming that aren't client facing, and that it might be a little difficult to keep the client in mind and understand exactly what it is. So on that side, we get data from our regulators, who there's like so many reports that come out for us, giving us great information, to be honest. We have our employee surveys, and we have a lot of different data points that we have very smart people. We have there's a new culture group, and it's headed by Hannah Searson. That's their job, is to kind of look at the tea leaves of these different surveys and say, okay, so here's, as I said, like one thing that we want to do better, maybe be more client focused. What does that really mean? And try to break that down and sprinkle some of that along. And again, we use that culture flower to think about, all right, we're going to do a campaign, when we bring everyone, all the high potential programs, which maybe they'll meet face to face, who knows, in 2022, we're going to have an element about that. All of our leader speakers are going to focus on client centricity and what it means if you're not facing the client, because those guys, for the most part, get it. So we try to kind of go along that continuum. And, Michael, you mentioned like development plans. I don't know, like my personal opinion, I don't think I've ever had a development plan for myself. And so maybe I'm not a good learning person. They always come to me when they're like, we need a banker's brain. What would you do, Erica? Bad learning person, like the development plans. But yeah, it's a conversation with your manager. That's basically what it is, right? So, what are you trying to do? Can we get you to have some real work around this skill and give you feedback so you can learn that on the individual. And at the same time, we've got this whole meta thing going on that, we're not hitting you over the head with it, but it's getting in the water, hopefully. And I have seen, and I wasn't a big believer that this stuff really makes a difference, but in the 6 years I was at Citi, the culture has shifted immensely where like I'm absolutely such a cynic before, and I've had to eat my shoe or whatever that is called when you're like, all right, I was wrong. It can be done. It takes a lot longer than most people think, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with, like you said, an organization of that size with that kind of legacy, which I imagine, Michael, you've got a little bit of a different issue internally, which is everybody gets to have an opinion when it's open source. And how do you navigate that challenge in your role on, okay, there's a lot of demands for the business. You've gone over them. There's a lot of modalities of which you can deliver this. How do you choose how to prioritize for the entire organization?
Well, I think prioritization is one of the most important things we do, and one of the things that's the hardest to do. And I've never worked anywhere that was actually good at it, and I think it's almost an unsolvable thing. But we really try to focus on what does the business want, what behavior changes does the business need in order to either take advantage of an opportunity in the market or to solve a problem that they're having. And yes. There's a big misunderstanding of open source that it's this, yes, everybody has a voice. A lot of people hear that, including our associates sometimes, that everybody has a vote. And the answer is no, you don't have a vote. You can provide input, but a decision is still going to be made, right? And it's not going to be based on the loudest voices. It's hopefully based on the best ideas that came forth. But we do nothing at Red Hat now that's mandatory. NHO is not mandatory. New manager training is not mandatory. Nothing is mandatory because of our culture of, take what you want, do what you want, that sort of thing. The only thing that's mandatory, of course, is our ethics and compliance training. And that's not really training, that's really legal risk mitigation, right? So that's just to say that you did that to people, or for people.
So your challenge is you've got to make it good because they need to come. They have
absolutely. It's got to be good, and we also try to provide things in as many different modalities as possible, because people like things in different ways, right? And I don't care how they get it, as long as they get it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, goes back to ultimately learning is up to the individual that's making that choice to gain the knowledge and put it to practice. So
I agree with that, but one of the things that I was going to say yell at my team about, but I would never yell, right? Because I'm an inspiring manager. One of the things I try to inspire my team to remember is it's a cop out. It's an abdication of our responsibility as a learning organization to say, well, the people didn't take it or the managers didn't support it. Well, if they didn't, then we need to figure out what we can do differently so that they do. Yes, we don't control them, but it is we are accountable for helping people learn, even though in reality we have no control over them. So I've been in a number of learning organizations, or I've seen a number of learning organizations over the years that said, hey, we gave you good stuff, you didn't do it, because they don't have direct authority. I think that's a real cop-out for a learning organization. If it's not happening, if it's not getting used, then you've got to change what you're doing as a learning team.
right.
And Michael, on that I say, like, we also, in the leadership development, which is the group that I work under, we don't do mandatory either. And we try to do the sneaky way of network analysis, figure out who are the influencers, and then we'll reach out to them. We usually know them. Hey, have you taken that? You get, 5 out of 150 people, the right 5 to take it. They always tell everybody, like, these are the people people look to them. They're the ones on the online learning sites and whatnot. And it's, it's better than us even sending out emails,
Absolutely. And then there's another technique which some people would call shaming. I would just call competition, which is start showing how much in each group is doing things.
Yes.
And then the leaders want
the business
to be the
leaders,
winner, right? And so then they drive their people, right?
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of ways to get things to happen.
So competitive. It works.
Yeah. Well, I'm just getting pinged that we've got 5 minutes left. And so there's one question that I am curious that continues to come up in the conversations I have with employers. And I feel like this is an age-old question, and it's kind of, we talk about generations. So that's, the question is going to be about how do we work with, especially as we think about technology and innovation. Erica, you mentioned all my managers wanted everybody to know Python. And the truth of the matter is there's a lot of kids that are coming into the workforce now that have some of those skills, and they might not have gotten them from formal education. And so how do you all think about how we are not so much about the generational, like the demographics and people and the generational changes, or, across generations, but how we're going to think about the next generation of learning and education, knowing that we're in a process of the traditional structures breaking down, and that it's going to happen really quickly. If not, it's already happening, where the ways that we've evaluated talent before, the credentials that we looked for, are gone. And how do we make sure that next workforce coming in is coming in with the skills that they need, and what does that look like? So how are you all thinking about this next generation of learning?
I'll start real quickly. I know we don't have much time, but I'll say 2 things. Is we've got to, and companies are doing this, we've got to hire for potential, not experience, right? You have to hire for the ability to learn and the ability to build the skill, because A, the skills aren't out there that you need. And B, a lot of people that are building their skills didn't do it through traditional methods. The requirement for a college degree is a thing of the past in the technology industry, at least in a lot of companies, not all companies. So you've got to, and then you need to figure out some sort of assessment mechanism, but there's all kinds of challenges with that. But I really believe in the hiring for potential. I'll stop. The other thing I'll say we talked about a little bit earlier was that the learning organizations value proposition is moving very quickly towards curation, not creation, right? And then making available to people quality content that they then self-select, right? I mean, you said earlier that Google is what people do a search on. I think Erica said that. I did a survey of IBM employees, and IBM is a pretty stodgy conservative company. We did this probably 11 years ago on how are they finding learning. Google was the #1 answer 11 years ago, over a decade ago. So people are not going to, but curation and showing quality, having quality things available, I think for that development is really important.
Yeah. Regina, Erica, any comments on the next generation of learning before Kinga moves us to our the next panel?
Erica, I think this is your sweet spot.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is, I talked about the influencers. So I was thinking about all the different software, whether it's Power BI or, I don't want to list them all because I can't, but, power users as an example, right? These are the guys who are the experts, and recognizing internally who are the power users means they've been recognized by that software, they teach it, and elevating them and connecting them. That's one of the things that on the data side that I was really trying to do. I was never going to be able to catch up and be an expert, but how can we make these, as Michael was saying, like the informal ways that people are learning these skills a bit more formal, and recognize them in learning, and make them a legitimate path. And the people that are internally at Citi, for example, maybe they weren't the best teachers, but they were able to help me identify, here are our power users internally, we're going to bring in some external power users. So again, like being agile, being a good connector, being a good diagnoser, and being able to curate and get those skills in fast. We're not going to be the experts anymore. We're not going to be creating content most of the time, but we're going to have to understand and bring it in as quickly as possible. And a lot of non-traditional, we'll be looking at non-traditional areas to find these skills as well.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Michael, Erica, and Regina, for your perspectives today. This has been a awesome conversation, and one that I get to, this has been fun to hear different perspectives and momentum. My company is very much in these conversations as well. So for those of you out there looking for a training provider, I would love to have a conversation with you. And again, thank you all for your time, your perspective, and Kinga, I will turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Jessica, and thank you all of you for your really amazing insights. I mean, I was just wanting to jump in constantly with questions, but Jessica was asking all the right questions. I mean, this hour is definitely nowhere near long enough to discuss these topics, so it was absolutely fantastic. Thank you all very much for your insights and your dedication to this field. So, and thank you everyone who joined this talk. All right, well, thank you very much.